What's up everyone, it's Sprometheus, and today we are talking about Ristretto. We all know that espresso is a really concentrated coffee beverage, and Ristretto is just one step further in that direction. So it's even more concentrated than a shot of espresso because it's just a shorter pull in general. Now, there are arguably many different ways to make a Ristretto shot. You can find them all over the internet. People have their own ideas. I'm gonna go over a few of the ones that seem to be the most prevalent online and the way I practice doing a Ristretto shot, but that's all up to you. I can just see the comment section now, so
we call that a
Ristretto.
This is a
Ristretto.
Now, outside of the theories, let's talk about the top 3 most common and most popular ways I've found to make a shot of Ristretto, at least the most agreed upon that I could find. Now, the first way is just stopping your shot early. So you're not changing any of the dynamics of your espresso shot, you're not changing the grind or anything like that, you're just pulling your shot at 15 milliliters. So style number 2 is a little bit more traditional. So you're aiming for obviously a bit of a shorter extraction time. So you want about 1 gram out for every second. So you're looking at 15 grams out in 15 seconds. And that generally is considered the traditional way to pull a shot of Ristretto. And last but not least, a lot of people view that 15-second mark as an under extraction and tend to grind even just a little bit finer from there and pull 15 milliliters out in a standard shot extraction time. So that's about 25 to 30 seconds. So we're gonna try all 3 of these today, and we'll also dive in a little bit to double Ristretto, where there's 2 schools of thought. One is you have to pull 2 15 milliliter separate shots to get a double Ristretto, or on the other hand, you can do a 1-to-1 brew ratio where you have 20 grams in, 20 grams out, for example, and that's your shot of Ristretto. Now we're gonna start with method 1, stopping the shot early. So I have this espresso dialed in to just a standard shot of espresso. I'm using 20 grams in, I had it dialed in to 40 grams out. What I'm gonna do is just pull this shot as I normally would, not changing anything having to do with the grind size, tamp, none of that stuff is changing. And I'm just going to stop it at 15 grams, and we're going to see how it comes out in terms of flavor. We'll see if it kind of lands in that realm of being over or under extracted, or it could potentially fall directly in the center of the 2 other methods because we're not really changing anything. So this could definitely change depending on the coffee you're using. There could be this point where the stars align and your 15-second in terms of dial in and 15 grams in terms of output falls together in your normal shot timeline, and you just have a perfect shot of Ristretto, and if you let it go you have a perfect shot of espresso. But that's like winning the coffee lottery, and how often does that happen? Well, it's not terrible, but it's not great. Now, this is called the lazy method for a reason, and it has a medium to light body, a slightly sour flavor, and a lack of sweetness overall. I think it generally has a flavor of some under extraction. And now on to method 2, 15 grams in 15 seconds. Now, generally speaking, this is the one that seems to be across the board the most popular version of a Ristretto shot. It also seems to be the most agreed upon version in terms of flavor and just in the ideal outcome of a Ristretto shot. And to be honest with you, I generally agree. Now, I haven't tried all these methods until today, but this one generally is the way I make my Ristretto shots if I'm making a single. It just creates the best overall outcome in terms of flavor, balance, texture. All the things I love about espresso are in this Ristretto shot, and this style is my go-to if I really am craving that chocolatey espresso experience, because the deep tones really come out if you have a little medium to medium dark roasted coffee and you pull a Ristretto like this, you will not be disappointed. And this one lives up to the hype. It's smooth, has a full body, it's complex in the terms that you have those really nice balanced flavors of caramel and chocolate lingering together, and it has a nice long finish, which is something that generally means you had a good extraction for that coffee, but it's not like a bitter or sour flavor. And finally, method 3, finer grind and a longer shot. Of course, everybody has been talking about these shorter shots after this recent scientific breakthrough that happened in the last few months, but I think that it's important to consider the fact that through my research, people are generally still pulling shots in the 25 to 30 second range, and I'm also one of them. So I always feel like I'm not getting enough out of my puck, or that's kind of the way I was trained when it comes to espresso. So I think that pulling a shot a little bit longer with a little bit lower output in theory does sound like it's going to be a more flavorful shot, but you do run the risk of over extraction. So the way I'm combating it on this shot is using a 20-gram dose because, as you know, larger dose means it's harder to extract, which means a lower risk of over extraction. So we're going to run this all the way out to 15 grams out, and it's going to take about 29 seconds. I'm going to go just a little bit over, so I'm about 15.9 grams out, but we're going to just run with this shot and see how it tastes. And to my surprise, this is the worst of the three. So it has a very intense brightness or acidity. It's slightly drying in my mouth and the flavor is really hollow. So that leads me to believe that this is actually slightly or nearly over extracted. And last but not least, let's talk about the two methods of making a double ristretto. So in the very beginning of the video, I mentioned the two methods, one of which is pulling two separate 15 milliliter shots, running at that second method that we talked about in the standard single shot versions, or pulling one 1-to-1 ratio shot to just see how they turned out. I didn't want to do two very long specific segments for each of these drinks because the surprising fact is they taste very similar, and I didn't think it would be fair to just draw it out and talk about those two different shots as if they were very, very different. Honestly, they're both very similar shots, and I don't really see a reason to either do one or the other. They carry the same balance and complexity as that original 15 milliliter and 15 seconds traditional ristretto shot does, with the only major difference being the body and the two separate shots together is a bit heavier, and the complexity and the one long shot is just a bit more. So now let's talk final thoughts about ristretto and these methods. So in terms of a single ristretto shot, there appears to be a clear winner, at least to my palate. So the 15 grams out in 15 seconds just seems to be the overall most enjoyable experience with the most balance and flavor, sweetness, and all those things. The other two kind of hit on the edges of over extraction and under extraction, which is something that I generally don't prefer. This shot will definitely require some fiddling. You know, the interesting thing is, from my regular espresso dial-in to the 15 grams out in 15 seconds, I did find myself coursing up the grind because you have to get a certain amount out pretty quickly. Generally, I don't see the first drops of espresso when I'm pulling a standard shot for about 7 seconds or so, and for the ristretto shot, I was seeing the first drops around 4 seconds. So you have to kind of course it up to get that 15 grams out in that short 15-second span, which sounds like it's a fast shot, but based on some recent discoveries with espresso and extraction, it seems kind of clear that this actually may not be that bad of a shot. But like your average espresso or coffee experience goes, this just drives home the point that really all it takes is a second or a gram to make a shot either good or awful. And that's the really interesting thing about espresso. Of course, you never really know, until you use that specific coffee with your specific equipment and your water. All these factors come into play. You're never going to be able to recreate exactly what I'm doing here at home, but it's worth definitely experimenting with and seeing where you kind of fall in terms of that flavor experience with ristretto. Lastly, and kind of anecdotally, roast level is going to make a pretty significant difference in your ristretto shot, even more so than it would in a shot of espresso. In this video, I used a much darker coffee than I usually would. That partially was by accident because I didn't actually think Blue Bottle was roasting their Hayes Valley that dark, but I got it and I just ran with it. It actually ended up being a relatively pleasant experience in a ristretto shot. If I were to go with a much lighter coffee, it's like playing Russian roulette with your taste buds. You may get that pleasant click of balanced sweetness and acidity, or you're going to end up with a loud bang of sourness, bitterness, acidity, and basically any extreme you can possibly think of with an espresso shot. Definitely I'd recommend experimenting with all roast levels because it's all worth experiencing. I've definitely pulled those light roasts as ristretto, and I don't want to say I regretted it, but it was an experience I won't forget. And I definitely recommend trying it at least once or twice just to kind of have that in your repertoire of taste notes so you can kind of have that and just put it in your pocket for later, I guess. I don't know. But now it's time to turn you loose on the comment section. So let me know down below, what's your favorite method for ristretto? Did I miss your favorite method? Let me know what it is. And of course, what are your thoughts on ristretto in general? And a big thank you to my May Patreons, Ads, James B, David, Hamad, Christopher, John K, Squeegee, Roe, Brian, Lisa, Thomas B, Andre, Rick Racer, Sean, Joey, Thomas S, Noel, Spookus, Bound Coffee, Mika, Samantha, Nathan, Aiden, Jonathan, Claire, Steven, James K, Josh, Andrew, Ollie, Ninja Warrior Coffee, and Testing 123. And of course, a big thank you to the barista and barback tiers. If you want any information on my Patreon, there's a link in the description and in the upper right hand corner right now. Lastly, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Hit that little bell button for notifications of new videos posted every Friday. Follow me on Instagram at Sprometheus for content throughout the week, my blog at Sprometheus.com, my coffee at littlegiant.coffee, and as always, stay caffeinated. Pony Boy.